So my number two film that shaped my feeling of family is The Godfather from 1972. This is a film directed by Francis Ford Coppola. Al Pacino stars in it, along with James Caan, Marlon Brando, Robert Duvall, and Diane Keaton. I mean, I think I'm kind of stating the obvious here, but I said
Never
the
heard of
cast.
this movie.
Yeah, I said the cast. And I'll tell the IMDb plot summary as well. The aging patriarch of an organized crime dynasty in post-war New York City transfers control of his clandestine empire to his reluctant youngest son. Pretty good summary, actually.
Mhm.
Not that, again, I probably had to read it off because I think people, even if they haven't seen it, know the basic premise of this film. So, this movie, I think, I didn't put it as my number one, but I think more than any other film, to me, always there's so many different themes of what family is woven into this film that is always spoke for me. And the main theme here is that, these bonds that you have with your family is always something that, there is an obligation to that. That you do because you are related to the, your immediate family, I'll say, or even your extended family. But I feel it way a lot so with the immediate family, that there is an obligation to honor that in some way. Like, you're always going to be there for these people, no matter what. If they ask you something, like, that is of the most importance. Anything coming against, if you're making a decision or something comes in conflict with what your family wants, like, your family, you should default always to them over whatever this other ask is. And that's, again, one of the important things about having a family that you are related to. And these are all themes that definitely, there's lines of dialogue in this movie. I mean, one of those films that is not instantly, but quotable, like, with almost every line. But there's a lot of lines here. I mean, even in the opening scene about, like, never dishonoring the family. There's that famous quote from Marlon Brando's character, who plays the Godfather in the film. A man who never spends time with his family is not a man. So definitely defining that, like, your family is your, masculinity in this sense. But I do think it is something that is very important to you. Something that I've, always felt that, family is something that is very important, that you should be, spending time with your family and honoring. And then Michael, is the main, Al Pacino. I don't know if he's, like, the main character in this film necessarily, but he's the arc where, he is the kid who kind of went against his family in a way. Like, he went off to join the army when this was not something that anyone else wanted. In the opening scene, it opens with a big wedding, so a big family event, and everyone's there in their tuxedos. And, Michael definitely visually stands out. He's in his, army. I don't know what those. They're not dressed whites because he's not in the Navy. His nice army costume, uniform. That's the word I was looking for. Uniform. And he's there with his waspy girlfriend, like, so not an Italian. He's saying to her, "Oh, this, my family's not me." He talks to her about his dad. Basically threatened to kill somebody. So he's distanced himself from his family. And, I think that in the beginning of the film shows that he is kind of going against what the theme of the movie is. And as the movie progresses, and obviously at the end, he is fully now in the belief, as, again, the message of this film is that the family is the most important thing. And he kind of shunned the family for a while and went off on his own, and gets pulled right back in once his family is threatened. There's also a theme in this film about this is business isn't personal, because they're a mafia, obviously. This comes up a lot, but I've always taken this as, that's a theme of maybe what this family's believing in. But Michael makes all the decisions he makes in this film for personal reasons. Like, the reason why he then decides to join the family business and basically become a mobster and inherit his father's place is because his dad was shot. And that is all that once his dad is in danger, that is something that is very personal to him. And he makes all of his decisions based on that. So he's doing it in at least in this film, for the love of his family and for the love of his father. He's constantly asking, is his dad okay? He makes the ultimate sacrifice by committing a murder, which is something he never thought he would, do outside of the army, and then going away to Italy for, I think it's like a year or two, basically giving up his girlfriend, giving up his entire life. He sacrificed all that because he wanted to make sure his dad was okay by killing the people that were trying to kill him. So when he's put to that test at the end of the day, like, even though he did shun his family through all that time, like, he stepped up. And that is definitely something that, I think is very important to a family, knowing that your family will step up no matter what for you, even if it is something illegal. I don't know if I should say that on the podcast, but that they would kill, I mean, maybe again, I shouldn't say that on the podcast, but that they would go against things that they never thought they would do, but they're doing it for the love of their family. And that is what Michael does. And then, he has that other famous line towards the end of the film when he's already, decided to inherit his father's business to his brothers, basically yelling at Fredo saying, you never take sides against the family. And now he's inhabiting the ethos and the I guess morals, values is probably a better word, values of his family that he shunned for probably a whole portion of his life, because of maybe he was just didn't want to be partaking in the business, who knows, but he kind of does that full circle into, nope, I am basically replacing my father when he actually does pass away, and doing what needs to be done because it is the family. And obviously they use the term family here to refer to the crime family as well, but it's clear from Michael's story arc that this is he means his actual like immediate family. And so again, there's a lot of other themes in this film too, but they all in a way tie back to this notion of family every time I see this film. So I had to, even though it might be maybe the greatest film about family, I didn't put it as my number one, but I had to include it in here. And you can also comment it on a meta level too. Francis Ford Coppola, this is in a way kind of like a family for him too, behind the camera. Right. He cast his sister. His dad did the score for the film. His daughter, Sophia, plays the son of Michael at the end of the film in the baptism scene. So he's involving his family around him when he's constructing this film. And, a lot of his other films too deal with family as well and themes. But I mean, this one is, I think, more personal to him because his family actually was immediately involved. So yeah, I mean, again, a lot has been said about this film. So I don't need to kind of get into more details other than the family themes. But I do think this is one of the greatest films. I mean, if your Aliens came down, it's a give me 10 films. Right. This and its sequel will definitely be in there. And I do think Al Pacino's performance in this might be some of the best acting I've ever seen in any movie. I mean, especially that scene where he right before he decides to kill the cop and the other gangster. I just can't. The performance is maybe only topped by himself in the second film. But again, one of the greatest performances and one of the most amazing ending shots in any film as well too. But so yeah, for me, when I think family and about what that means and that you would do anything for your family, which is something that I definitely feel like Godfather had to be discussed.
Yeah, I mean, what could I add that hasn't been said about The Godfather? But I hadn't watched it in a while, and watching it again in prep of this podcast was just such a riveting experience, It's a long movie, but you're in it from the very beginning, and every department is firing on all cylinders right from the wedding. And the theme of family, yeah, I mean, I have a similar view on this movie. I've always had that view on this movie, that this movie is really about that. Mm-hmm. And it's about the father son. It's about the arc of Michael, like you mentioned, but it's also about everybody else, Mm-hmm. This whole enterprise is what it is because the family stands the way it does. Even lesser vocal members of the family, like Vito's wife, mm-hmm. they all have a role to play in this. The older son, James Caan's character, who gets killed, he has his own role. And you see that interwovenness of family and business right from the opening wedding scene, where Vito is doing all these deals and people are coming up to him for various things. And then he's like stepping out, attending the daughter's wedding. Then he's back in. It's all interwoven. We are thrown into this mix mm-hmm. right at the beginning of the movie. And it sort of builds and basically makes that statement that this whole enterprise, this whole business is nothing if the family is not standing together. And that's when you see the family in peril, when mm-hmm. people from the family like Fredo or James Caan's character and such are acting out and are trying to sort of do what they think is right and not thinking in the interest of the family. And that's precisely the reason, to your point, why Michael is the only suitable heir to all of this, because he can think in the interest of the family and make that his own, and sort of keep that legacy going. So yeah, it's just so brilliant. So brilliant.
Yeah, I actually hadn't seen this film in a number of years either before rewatching it for this. And every time I see it, it strikes me with how amazing it is and how I just want to be in this world. And I immediately then watch 2 and 3 right after it, because I just, you want to live in this world. And you know, the third film, not that great, but the second film is, I mean, arguably even better.
Which is like unbelievable, that how can you top something like this?
It's insane. But yeah, I agree with what you said too about the different family members. I think as well, like the dynamics here seem so real. Like Sonny, who's James Caan's character, he acts like a brash older son who just sort of expects everything to come to him because he's the oldest. And you can tell he's been like, you know, treated differently and specially all growing up. And Fredo is the guy who's always trying to please everyone because he's like the middle child in a sense. All these people are the actors put forth performances that seem so real. Like they are really a family and related to one another. And you don't really even you understand where they're coming from immediately because you know where they sit in the family, in the family structure. It's just, I mean, again, I don't know how it's like these things where it's like, how does a movie like this come about when it's like the screenwriting's great, the acting is great, the directing, everything comes together. And it's like, wow, this feels so natural. Like, it's like you're watching a real family, go about their not so great business. I'm not, gonna say what they do is great.
Even though we know how troubled the making of this movie was, it basically fell apart like 1,000 times. And so that in itself is kind of a miracle that this is the outcome.
No, that's true. It's funny actually how you look back on so many films that are like the 10 best movies ever made, and they all, not all of them, but a lot of times they have horribly troubled productions. It's just it just shows you never really know. You have lightning in a bottle, and it might seem like a disaster when you're making it, but then boom, you have like The Godfather, maybe the greatest movie ever made. So
totally.
Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now, or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.